We are so pleased this evening to have Graham Fry as our speaker. Graham, for over a decade with his company Winding Path Custom Stone Masonry, has been moving rocks around the triangle, creating beautiful, functional, and whimsical stone features with old school craftsmanship. We know a little bit about Graham. He did some of the work in the Japanese garden renovation with the stones and the gravel sea there. He worked with Paige Moody, who her company is Arboretum Enterprises, is doing the new pathway right through here. And he worked with her for several years in his past as well. And Suzanne Edney said, well, we just got to get Graham to be a speaker at Friends of the Arboretum lecture. So we're looking very forward to Graham presenting creative stone possibilities, solving problems, and creating whimsical structures with stone creativity. All right, Graham, I can't say it, you can. Thanks.
Thanks to everyone for coming out tonight. What I want to do is just, I'm going to scroll through my pictures and just briefly talk about each project. And if you have any questions or want to make any comments or anything, just stop me and I'll be happy to answer any questions. I've been doing stonework since '99, and it's been the perfect job for me. I love to work outside. I'm pretty easily bored, so having a creative job is important for me. So stonemasonry has been the perfect job. And being bored has its advantages in terms of trying to evolve as a craftsman, because you're always trying to find new ways to do something, do it better, do it more interesting. And a lot of these photos just kind of chronicle that evolution. So these steps, these folks bought a lakefront property house, and they asked me to come up with a way to get down the hill. And I was able to find these beautiful quarry sandstone slabs. And I had pretty much a clear palette. I mean, I could do whatever I wanted design-wise, and a winding path down a hillside makes sense aesthetically. You don't want straight lines going down a hill, especially on steps. You want people to be able to, you want to slow people down when they're walking down. So the design part was easy on this one. The hard part was the creative part to this was trying to get these in place. I had to build ramps. I used a hand truck. I really couldn't get anything up and down the hill other than a hand truck and with ramps. So that was the creative part of this project. This is another set of steps. She has, this client had a really unusual yard. It was kind of already naturally tiered, and she had some gullies. And they were just great spaces to put different kind of rooms, different kind of outdoor rooms. And this is one of several that I built for her on her property. And we kind of went with a rustic look on this one. You can see the rustic slab steps, dry lay patio, and she was really pleased with this look, so we just kind of kept this going on other parts of the yard. And that was in the back. This is the front. She's a potter. She wanted a way to get up to her shed. And she had an existing wall that had fallen down, and I just took the stone from that. We designed this one together as we've done on most of these projects. And again, I was able to use these nice quarried slabs for steps, which I love, and reuse the stone that she had and just added a bluestone cap. And she loves to plant, so she did her thing. this was a really interesting project. The homeowner is a geology professor at State, Jim Hibbert, and he had brought all of these river rocks. He had a huge pile of river rocks that he had brought a pickup truck loaded at a time down from his boyhood home in upstate New York. And I usually don't like to build big stuff with these thin stones, but I was really excited about trying to figure out how to work these in. And it turned out great. And he was happy, I was happy, and the stones look happy too. Massive fireplace. These folks basically wanted a screen, some kind of screen. And they didn't, I had to help them, steer them in a direction for the look of the whole project. You know, do you want to go rustic? Do you want something more contemporary? And they were both from the mountains, and so I said, well, how about ski lodge? So they said, okay. So they let me do my thing, but I really enjoyed this one. I was able to use some really large boulders at the base of this. And that was the first time I had done that. And it was definitely a challenge. There's some dry lake walls that tie into this. There's a patio area. But I was really happy with the way this turned out. But it was a really challenging project. There's another, it's a smaller fireplace. This is one of the first ones I've done. Kind of your standard boxy kind of outdoor fireplace. It's funny, I enjoy building these, you know, these big structures like this, the fireplaces, but I'm actually starting to enjoy building fire pits more. You can just get more creative with them. It's hard to talk someone into doing crazy stuff with an outdoor fireplace. It just, you don't see much creative work as far as design on these. I mean, I've got lots of crazy ideas, but it's hard to talk people into doing that on one of these. Here's another one. They wanted brick to tie into their existing brick patio. Bluestone hearth. Indoor fireplace. This was fun. This large piece of stone here, the mantle was an old Raleigh curbstone that I had stashed away. And he had originally wanted wood, and I said, well, what do you think about stone? And he saw the piece, he loved it. And then we had to get it up there. So that was interesting as well. It's not so bad outside because you can just move around, but he had nice hardwood floors in there, so that was challenging as well. But it worked out. This is a bar I had built for him across the room with some Oklahoma building stone, and had some guys come in and put a granite countertop on this. But that was a fun design as well as this build on this one.
How is the top secured?
They epoxy it down. I was able to find a really nice flat slab that was about 3 feet wide and the length that I needed for that bar. And I just ground the top until it was completely flat with an angle grinder, and we were just able to pop it on there. So this was one that I did last summer. This is one of my designs, and this worked well in their space. This is not a really high one, it's about 9 feet tall. And again, they wanted kind of a screen. They wanted to be able to set some chairs in front here and have some privacy from their neighbors, so this is what we came up with.
Now, when you build these outdoor fireplaces, did you have training on how to build them to make sure they draw properly?
I'm able to, you can find plans for the firebox dimensions. The draw on an outdoor fireplace is not as big a deal as it is on one inside, because you're not dealing with like different pressure inside or out. But yeah, it's definitely good to use a table of dimensions to build these. You just want to get it right.
What's on the inside of those fireplaces? Like, what is it, a frame that you build around, or?
No, you can buy a kit, but this one I did just with cinder block
Okay.
and flue liners on the inside. And that gave me a little bit more flexibility. The kits are great, but they come together easily. But you have to kind of dress them up to kind of do anything interesting with the design. But this is all block and mortar. Here's another shot. It's hard to see, but this is a dry lay patio. I really love using those, in making these dry laid installations. I'm able to use really large, sometimes 4x4, 4x5 pieces of flagstone. And it's nice because on these larger patios, you're able to kind of scale the stone to the size of the patio. And there aren't really joints. There's just enough of a joint between stones to sweep some poly sand in there, it's just hardening sand. This this river rock stream, this was the homeowner's idea, and I was so happy because this was something I've been trying to get people to do for a long time. I've drawn. It seemed like I've drawn it in every plan to have just a stream, winding stream of river rock go through their patio, and she brought it up, and I was just overjoyed that she would want to do this. This is a kitchen that I did a few years ago. And this is a sawn veneer. It's natural stone that's been sawn so that you can. And it's very thin and flat. It takes a lot of the weight away. It takes a lot of the labor out. So you get the look of natural stone with just a fraction of the weight and the labor as well. And it's perfect for these indoor kitchens or indoor projects like this. Now this is a project where the homeowner lived in Cameron Park. There's you see a lot of this stonework in that area, and unfortunately you can't get that old Raleigh brown stone anymore. A lot of the stone around there was grayish and had some of the brown mixed in, so I was able to get the quarry to send me what I needed, and just put this ribbon joint on here, which you see a lot of. And I really enjoyed doing this project. It was I think it was 22 tons of stone on this one. It was a big project. And the stairs were challenging. This stuff, it's impossible to shape. You can't chisel it. It's really difficult to saw, so it's pretty much just selecting each stone to go in the right place. And that's the beauty of this ribbon joint. It kind of hides all the imperfections.
What's that made of? What is the ribbon joint made of?
It's a raised mortar joint. It looks like a big cake decorating bag. It's a mortar bag, and you just squeeze it in. You leave about a ½ inch out, and then I have a concave tool that you just run along there, run across the joint, and it gives you this look. So here's another shot of that. There's a flat joint, and I was able to get a little bit of old Raleigh stone here. So here's a before picture of a porch, and here's the after picture. And again, the ribbon joint. And I love the look of the river rock with this particular joint. It just gives it a real soft, round look. And I was kind of in over my head on this one. I've never worked with river rock before, and it's challenging. It rolls right out. You can stick it in the wall, and it just wants to roll out. So you have to get creative about how to keep it in there. But it turned out nicely. The flat surfaces here are also river rock, which is kind of a nightmare to work with on a flat surface because you can't shape it, or else you take the finish off. So you, again, it's just selecting each piece for the right place. And there's another shot of the column, the wing one. This is another porch renovation, just with your standard kind of building stone and flagstone. There's a detail on that. This is called an ashlar stone, or ashlar style. You've seen some of this probably on the older buildings in Cameron Village, and it was really popular when they built that mall. And this is a Tennessee sandstone. Again, this is a flat veneer on these columns. They had some brick columns they wanted covered. Flat veneer did the job. Here's another shot of the larger fireplace, and got some cantilevered benches coming out of the wall here. And that's something I'm definitely going to do again. They didn't want to really have any kind of, my suggestion was maybe some sitting boulders around the fire, but they wanted to have the space, flexible, so they could put a table and chairs out there, and so it's just, how about cantilevered benches? So that worked out great. And there's a detail on the patio, again the dry laid flagstone patio.
How do you cut that flagstone?
I use an angle grinder with a diamond blade on it, and I have a 7-inch one that I can use on a radius like this, and I have a 4-inch one that I can use on smaller radiuses. But you can do some really accurate work with this. And this is another part of that same project. Again, dry laid flagstones. Here's another shot of the River Rock Walk and a wall there in the background. This is a mortared or a masonry walk that I did with some Tennessee flagstone with joints. I don't do a whole lot of this. I'd like to do more, but for some reason I have been doing all these dry laid patios all the way. So this is a simple garden path. This was kind of a problem area for the homeowner. It was really wet. I don't know what this ground cover is, but they couldn't kill it. So they just decided to deal with it. She said, "Can you put it between these stones?" I said, "Sure." And it's doing really well. Which is unusual because it's hard to get anything to grow between stones because they just get so hot and you get so cold. In the wintertime, it's hard to get stuff to grow, but this stuff does great. This is a shot of a dry laid wall that I did. The homeowner had a lot of existing stone on their property, just a mix of stuff, and so I blended some other stones in there that I got from the stone yard. And you kind of see the wall leans back, and that's kind of the whole key to these is you want them to kind of fall into the hill, which is hopefully an immovable object. You see a lot of these in Europe and England, Ireland, Scotland. Don't see a whole lot of them here down south, but you do see them in other areas of the country. But I really love using these walls. This is one that I did with some river stones, which again was really challenging, but it turned out really nice. And this is another dry laid wall, but this slope extended forward. We chopped off the top of the hill here. His backyard the slope almost went to his back door, and so we removed, 20 yards of soil or more, and just built this retaining wall to retain this, and he was able to plant on the hill. It's just a solid hill of weeds, and so he was just overjoyed to be able to have a usable backyard. Another dry laid boulder wall. These are some big ones. This one sent me to the chiropractor. So I've been going ever since, which I guess is a good thing. This was, I got in a Pebble Mosaic book, and I wanted to give it a try, and I had a client who had an area that she didn't know what to do with. I said, well, how about some river rock? And she said, okay. And so I just kind of did this, and she loved it. It's definitely something I want to use again. I could see using this design, vertically, like on a feature wall or on a fireplace or something like that. This is just a simple dry laid installation.
There's nothing gluing them down?
No, no, they're just, there's a solid walk. This is an area that's probably 5 feet wide. And so they're just carefully placed. And they're sizable rocks. Some of them are, 6 by 6. They're good sized river rocks, and they're stacked in there pretty tight. So it's been there a couple
Is this
of
a floor?
It's a space. It's outside. It's between the wall of her house
I mean,
and
is it flat or is it vertical?
Oh no, this is flat.
Okay.
Yeah, it's hard to tell with the photo. Yeah, this is flat.
Is there a coating on that?
No, I just sprayed it with the hose.
Oh,
It
so
made
it's
the
just-
colors
it's just
pop.
wet.
Yeah. So this is another yard that was just, it was just a mess. They had this slope that came down from the fence, almost right to their back door. So again, we removed yards and yards of soil and built these retaining walls, and used concrete pavers. The patio was already existing, but I was able to just butt everything right up to that, and it worked out well. The fern here is sitting on a table. We ran into some tree roots that we couldn't really get rid of, and I said, well, how do you feel having a table and bench over these tree roots? And she liked that idea, so that we didn't have to kill the tree to get this in here. And there's another shot. It's a pretty tight area. I mean, the slope's about 4 feet high here, and it's just right up against the fence, so it worked out great. There's another shot in the back. This is the front. Again, dry laid walls, slab steps. She had a front walk that was built out of the old Raleigh granite that's impossible to find, and she had just enough to build this walk. And that was the first time I built a walkway out of that material, and it worked great. So this is a before picture. They had just had a deck built. They had some drainage problems back here. They just wanted to make it a usable, fun space. And so this was, you can see the rain chain right next to the brick column. This is kind of a solution that we came up with. Instead of having the white gutter pipe come down, I built kind of this vessel which the rain falls in here off the rain chain, and there's a pipe in here, there's gravel. It's basically a French drain. It carries away the bulk of the water, and when the idea was have it overflow a little bit and go through the river rock stream here. And it works well. These circles over here were circles that I left for him, so he could put in a pagoda later. That was a later project. But I kept thinking, well, what am I going to do? How am I going to end this? And I kept telling her, oh, I'm going to think of something. And finally, the last day there, I was like, what about a waterfall? So I built a faux waterfall in the pool out of these river rocks, and just let it, I wanted to look like a natural feature that they had built around. So it turned out well. And this was a water feature that butts up to that same patio. And The stream was neat because it kind of brought the theme of the actual water feature onto the patio. Here's another shot. Another water feature. This is a dry laid fire pit that I built in Hillsborough. There's some mortar in the back wall there, but the rest of it is just dry laid and fitted with a lot of hammering and chiseling. And it turned out nice. And this is a fire pit that I actually just finished this week. 4 boulders that are linked together, as you can see, with these thinner stones. And I'd had these boulders originally as accent boulders in another part of the yard, and they said, well, we can't really see them. Can you do something else with them? I said, what about the fire pit? I said, okay. So this turned out really nice. This was fun to do this, and I thought that you can see kind of the river rocks at the base. I thought if I'm putting this in the middle of the patio, I need some kind of transition. It's going to look too hard if I put, this much stone in the middle of a stone patio. So I just kind of cut some nice wavy shapes in the stone and just filled it in between with the river rock and some river rock gravel. It just kind of softened it up a little bit. And this is another route that I ran to when I was building a small retaining wall, and just built a little arch over it. This is a Japanese garden here at the Arboretum. And it was nice because on this project I got to work directly with Harriet Bellergeau and Bobby Modern, and I learned so much from them about placing boulders. It was just really great to work with them. They had so much experience with Japanese gardens and designing and hands-on building with them. And it was just a pleasure to work with them. So this is the earlier project with the river rock embedded in here. And I was getting low on thin stone, so I was having to come up with a way to use scraps. So these vertical pieces in here was a way to do that, and just gave it kind of a craftsman style kind of look, which he loves. He uses this, actually, he cooks on this actually. There's some, he has a grate that goes in here, and he also builds fires, and there's a patio that he and his buddies play music around.
Is the thin stone bordered?
Yeah, this was all boarded. Yeah. This has got a concrete block base. It's built on a concrete slab. I just made a template out of plywood that I kept in place while I was working, and it let me get this nice line on the top. And I kept the sides kind of loose because I wanted that look. I didn't want them to be straight up and down. So here's a kind of a whimsical wall that I built for a client. And this is a bluestone cap. And the challenge for this was cutting this, and when you cut stone with a saw, it leaves a really smooth finish, and it doesn't match. It doesn't have any kind of texture on it. So you have to, with bluestone, you're able to do what they call flaming, and you basically take a sponge, you wet the stone after it's been cut, and then you take a blowtorch and heat it, and the steam pops off the stone and gives you that finish like you have on the top here. And it was really interesting for the first 5 minutes because I was on fire a couple times. And I had to run out and get a face shield, but that's part of the learning process, I guess, is being on fire at some point. And this is one of the fire pits that I built. She and I had this discussion about this area of our yard, and she says, "Oh, I just love it down here. It's really hard to leave." I said, "It's kind of like a vortex." She said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, what about a Vortex shaped fire pit? She said, I love that idea. So I've carried this design onto some other things that I've done as well. It's challenging, and but it's a lot of fun to build these. It's a simple bridge. I'd originally drawn her an arch bridge, but it was too expensive, and so I said, well, how about we put in some wrought iron this arch? And so I just did a sketch of this, and she said, I love it, I'm going to build it. And I was like, well, it took me like 30 seconds to draw, but go right ahead. And it turned out beautifully. So this is curbstone again. This is part of a radius. This came from the city of Durham. This lady she worked in the office, the same office for years, and would look out her window and see this stone laying at the edge of the parking lot. She asked permission to grab it, and we grabbed it one day, and I just made a little bench for her. This is an obelisk that a guy had me build for him. And I embedded some decorative tiles coming from the fountain up. And this was a challenge too. It's pretty high. I think it's about 14 feet high. And I'm working off a ladder, and it was tough. The hardest part for this project was, first of all, it's a fountain, so water comes out of the top and bubbles down the side. So I had to figure out, how am I going to do this? I was racking my brains at the end, trying to figure out how I was going to make the pinnacle, the top part. And I kept thinking I was going to have to carve a stone into a pyramid shape, which is really difficult to do, but I ended up actually, I was able to cut some thin pieces and shape them together, and still have that space for the pipe to come through, and it worked well. Luckily, it's far enough off the ground where you can't really look at it too close. And here's a shot with the water coming down. It just makes those colors pop. And this is a fire pit and a water feature that I designed and built for someone. The lower part's the fire pit. The upper part is the vessel. And my only instructions from the homeowner were, we want some kind of fire pit water feature thingy. And I'd had this design in my mind for a while, so I built a little clay model, and I just put it on the front porch, and I got this excited phone call from her, and she loved it. I actually kept that model on site to build from, just because it's really difficult to draw something like this from every angle. So I had to build some templates to get this looking good, but it turned out nice. Here's another shot of it. Back to the steps. And that's it. If you guys have any more questions, feel free to ask.
What's stone steps? How much do they weigh?
These slabs, they probably weigh about 300 pounds each. They're about 4 feet long, 6 inches high, and about 18 inches wide. But a hand truck, it's amazing what you can move on a hand truck. It's not as bad as this. If you can get them on there, then you can move them pretty easily.
Do you have any special base procedures that you follow?
The obelisk took, it took about a month to build the obelisk itself, and then the fountain around it probably took a week and a half. But it was challenging because I had to use strings on each corner, and so I had to go ahead and set the pipe and secure the pipe. So I had strings coming off the top of the pipe because the wind would blow and move the form, And I come the next day and I had to make sure I would have to check the form because it would twist. And I noticed one day, I was like, this doesn't look right. And the wind had twisted my form, and so I was kind of started building it this way. So I had to kind of back up and do that.
Do you have a team that you work with?
No, I usually work by myself. I usually I sub out work for excavation, and I bring in labor to do stuff like pour concrete, and if I need labor, you know, it's usually just another person just kind of helping me. But I do all of the, you know, the cutting and the laying and all that.
When you price your jobs out, do you generally find you're accurate in your pricing to cover your needs?
It depends. It's, you know, it's hard because projects evolve as you go along, and you know, homeowners make suggestions, and I see things that I didn't see before on paper. But yeah, in general, it's the materials are easy. You know, it's kind of a square foot per ton kind of deal. The labor is what's hard to estimate. So I just have, you know, when things start to change, you just have to have that conversation with the client. You know, this is, if you want to go move forward with this, then you know, it's going to be more. So.
How much rock do you have to end up throwing away or not using typically?
It depends on the project. I've got some of the larger retaining walls that you saw in there with the large stones. Some of that was getting to be wasteful because I needed precision because you want those walls to be really tight, and so I've started to use a thinner stone, like a 10% thin stone, 30%, you know, thicker stuff, and then the rest, you know, 60% of the really thick stuff. And it's saved a lot on labor and also materials as well. So it just depends on the material.
Why do you prefer bluestone as a wall cap?
Why?
Yeah.
That's usually not my first choice, but it is on a project where I need to do a lot of shaping, because I do have that option to flame the sides so I can keep that finished. Otherwise, you can do chiseled edges, but there's a lot of waste involved, and you end up sometimes you end up ruining a huge piece of stone just because it doesn't want to cooperate. So bluestone is, luckily it goes with a lot of stuff, and that's the beauty of it. I love working with it. I don't work with it as often as I would like, and not necessarily as a cap, just as a material for walls or anything like that. But it works pretty well with brick and any kind of stone. But my first choice is usually something in the brown or the tan range, just because those are a lot of the colors that I like to use anyway.
Are you training somebody for when your back gives out?
I'm sorry?
Are you training somebody for when your back gives out?
I'm training my chiropractor. No, I just discovered yoga, so that's kind of changed everything for me. It really has. But yeah, it's probably time for me to start training somebody. Yeah.
Several times you mentioned old lolly stone. What's that?
A lot of the old houses you see, stone houses inside the belt line, especially in the 5 Points area, the Cameron Park area, use what people call Wake County granite, which is a granite, but it's pretty poor quality, or brownstone, Wake County brownstone. Glenwood Village, that shopping center on Glenwood Road there at Oberlin, was one of those quarries. There's some others. The quarries that supplied the stone for Broughton are over there by North Hills, and they're now both full of water. So the quarries are gone. So it's difficult unless you can find a pile of that stuff laying around to get access to it. Luckily, there's some granite that you can order. That's a pretty good match color-wise. but it's still hard to get that texture.
Where do you find the old curbstones?
Pretty much anywhere in downtown areas, and if you look, you can sometimes see them. There's not really a source for them. You know, the Mount Airy Quarry, they turn them out all the time, but these old ones, sometimes if you look on the edges of parking lots and like areas that are kind of overgrown, you can find them. It's just getting them out and getting them in place that's the hard part.
For those dry, mortarless walkways and patios, what's the underlayment?
I use a 78M gravel. It's a fine gravel. It's above screenings and it's below 55, which is what you see in driveways. I used to use screenings, but I find that they wash out, and the 78 just stays in place nicely, and it's kind of permeable. I mean, if we're sitting on the
How thick a
patio.
layer of that is that? How thick a layer?
It depends. It depends what the soil situation is like. If it's like a dark, rich soil, I'll tamp, and then I'll put down 3 or 4 inches. If it's red clay, I'll just tamp it and just put down a couple of inches, and it doesn't go anywhere. And I'll either do a border of mortared building stone, or I'll do just your standard kind of plastic edging and just mulch or plant grass over that so you don't see it, just to hold the edges in place. But it's screenings to me are harder to work with. If you want to kind of shift things around and move them around, the 78 it makes it a lot easier.
Do your larger retaining walls, do you put a concrete structure behind them to support the weight?
No. The key is to prep the base. You want to go down about 8 or 10 inches, and you want to put some crushed gravel in there. But the wall is built, basically, it's leaning, it's falling into the side of the hill. And it's about a 15-degree, what they call batter. And I've seen pictures of dry laid walls built like that are 40 feet high, that people build. Switzerland, you see the ones that are really high like that. People build them to make space for orchards and vineyards and stuff like that. But it's amazing how high you can go, and they're really strong. They just don't move. But the British wallers and the Scottish guys and the Irish guys, they don't use any mortar. In fact, they hate mortar. I'm Facebook friends with some of these guys, and they're always kind of giving me a hard time for putting mortar on my walls, because sometimes I always mortar the top cap. But they have a lot of frost heave. So there's some movement there up and down with their walls, and they need to be kind of flexible. But that's the beauty of those walls. If you have a tree root that lifts up a section of wall, you can just rebuild that section. Whereas if you have like a rigid wall, it's going to cause the whole thing to lean, or it's going to break the stone, and you'll have to replace the stone. Whereas here, you can just kind of repair as needed.
Any more questions? Oh, that was a good round of questions. Well, thank you very much for a great presentation.